All right, well, let's get to our game review.
Yeah.
All right, so this week we are reviewing Praga Caput Regni. This is a game from Vladimir Suchy. The artist on the game is Milan Vavron, I think, and the publisher
great.
is, the publisher is Delicious Games. My apologies if I pronounced that wrong. So, Praga Caput Regni, I guess this is Latin, and it means Prague, head of the kingdom. And I guess this was like the slogan of the city back during the period of Charles IV, who was the emperor, the king of the Holy Roman Emperor. And like one of the things I found, like currently Prague has changed this on the city currently, like it's still on the emblem of the city, but now it's Praga Caput Republica. So it's, Prague, head of the Republic, as opposed to, head of the
Empire or kingdom or
head of the kingdom. Yeah, head of the kingdom. Yeah. So,
by the way, the same trip that I went to Vienna, I went to Prague also. So there we go.
And which did you prefer? Since
I actually preferred Vienna. I love Prague. Well, I went with my parents, and so I think that Prague, if I went with a bunch of friends, we probably would have gotten drunk in a bunch of the pubs and all that stuff. Prague was great, but Vienna really spoke to me. I loved Vienna. Loved it.
Okay.
Continue on.
So in this game, this is one of those games where like you take on the role of a wealthy person who's helping the king, in this case, King Charles IV, expand the city of Prague and help grow it into the capital of the Holy Roman Empire. So this is a little bit like Caelus. You remember Caelus, you're helping build out the city. And so I think what the narrative is like the more you contribute to the city, that's going to translate into victory points. And so the person who makes the biggest contribution to the city in the view of the king is the winner at the end of the game. And this is one of those games. So how do you contribute to the city? So this is an action. I would like trying to describe this game. This uses an action selection method. And in my opinion, like this is the most unique feature of the game, is that there is an action selection gear. So on your turn, and you're going to get 16 turns in this game. I think regardless of the number of players, you get like 16 turns. And on your turn, you're going to choose an action off of this wheel. And the action actually looks like two hexes that are stuck together, which will give you one of two options. So imagine like 8 of these different double hexes or so around a gear, and you're going to pick one of them and choose one of the two actions off of this piece. In addition to that, where this piece connects to the inner gear, there will be a reward that's on the gear, like generally this
spoke.
On the spoke,
it's like on the spoke.
Get some stone, get some gold, get a victory point. You can buy a better thing. Like there's some little stuff there that comes with like how it lines up with where it attaches to the gear. In addition to that, where on the wheel it is determines. Like there could be an additional cost in order to choose this action because it was chosen recently, or if an action doesn't get chosen for a long time, it starts to kind of like accrue a reward of victory points the longer that this thing does not get chosen. So on your turn, you're going to take one of these actions. You can kind of get these rewards. You can do that in any order, and then you're going to return the action back to the wheel, like essentially like send this action to the end of the line. So if somebody wants to choose this action again, it's going to be very expensive. You'll have to spend a lot of gold in order to choose this again. Whereas if something has been spinning around the wheel for a long time, there's more and more victory points that you get when you finally do choose it. So I think there's like 6 to 8 different actions, 8 different actions in the game or something.
I think there's six different actions you can take. And the game is really about you're using these actions to you can upgrade the actions themselves, so that way when you take that action, maybe when you take a certain type of action, you always get a piece of gold, something like that. You can build buildings on the map, so you can develop a little town in there. You can do what's called a wall building action, where you're building a wall around what essentially looks like a
your
honeycomb.
personal action board. Yeah.
Yeah, you have this little honeycomb, so you can build walls around it. That will give you certain things. You can increase your rock mining abilities or your gold mining abilities. Or there's also a road that goes through the map, and you can travel along the road. So you can actually decide to travel along the road.
That's like helping build the bridge, right? That's a bridge action, right?
And those are actually the 6 things that you can do. Just you're either building buildings, building walls, upgrading your actions, going down the road, or improving your stone or gold productions.
But even then, it's like you're choosing between I'm either mining for gold or I'm improving my mining for gold. I'm mining for stone, or I'm improving my mining for stone. Like even within that action, there's a choice in like what you're doing there.
Right. There's always like little actions, but sort of like from like a bird's eye view, those are really just you're only just doing those 6 things. But again, when you're doing those actions, you are considering where on the wheel you're pulling the actions from and what bonuses you're going to use to synergize with. And things just start to build and go crazy in ways that are far more involved than you would think from just taking these 6 simple actions.
Right, because there's like each of these things that we just described, then there's almost like there's secondary effects that result from that. Because like when I build a building in town, then stuff happens. Like there's a certain amount of like area control, completing squares, getting points for expanding the town. And then depending on the kind of building that you build, this might like contribute to the cathedral or contribute to the castle. And so there's always like, no matter what action you choose, and it seems simple, there's like these secondary effects that kind of tumble on from that kind of cascade.
Yeah.
And so it seems simple. Like it's a simple game of like on your turn, you take an action and then you pass. Yeah. And so sometimes in the game, this feels like a micro turn, like I'm just doing this little thing. And then other times it feels like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and like, oh, you just took a mega turn.
Yeah. And the combos basically go nuts.
The combos go nuts. And then on top of that, there's times when you've accrued a number of different kinds of window panes or whatever, so that in addition to your mega turn, you actually get to take a second turn. You get to take a Praga Caput Regni turn, which you take a second time. So sometimes it's little, sometimes it's a big turn.
It's that the turns get larger and larger because, as Trey said, like it seems like everything you do, especially when you're placing tiles, you always seem to get like a little bonus. And when your bonuses start to match up and this bonus leads to that bonus and it moves you up on that track and that kicks off another bonus and that kicks off another thing. And it feels like you're setting off a fireworks factory sometimes. And like you'll have a mega turn. And if you have a really good mega turn, people around the table will go, oh, wow, like that was a mega turn. You sort of feel like you get like a little bit of like a round of applause, at least in some of the games I played. It can really, and that's essentially what the game is all about. Like timing. It's about when am I going to take that action? What is it going to give me? Did I time it right so that way I can shoot off all these things all at once?
Yeah, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different sections of the board. It's a lot to take in at the beginning. You do eventually grok it so that this stuff makes sense. But there's a lot of things different going on here. Like, and it can be overwhelming. I was certainly a little overwhelmed when I first saw it because like I kind of said before, like the main part of the game is this action selection crane. And like, that's probably like my favorite part. It also has this beautiful hex tile map of the city where there's like an outer portion of the city. Then there's a more expensive inner part of the city. And you're always like trying to like complete filling in around these squares, or not squares. What are they called?
Plazas. They're called plazas. Right. Yeah, that map. And I think before we really drill down on all these things, because there's a lot of stuff actually going on. Like don't get confused that when we're like, oh, it's simple, it's just this, and this, and there's combos. There's a lot of stuff. So before we really drill down on all those things, I do want to take a moment to reflect on the art in this game.
Yeah.
This board, some will inevitably accuse it of being a very busy board. It is a busy board. I absolutely love it. This is probably one of my favorite boards of all time. I actually find it to be such a warm and inviting board, and you can sit there and you can look at, there's all these details. I always say, for some reason, it reminds me of a Richard Scarry children's book. A lot of times it gets compared to Where's Waldo.
Yeah.
It has that picture book quality. And if you look, there's like all these little adorable vignettes of people working or doing things all over the board, little boats in the river. And in fact, there are a lot of real life Prague landmarks that have been incorporated into the art, which is really cool. The instruction booklet actually has a page dedicated to landmarks around Prague, because we should mention that the designer, Vladimir Suchy, is actually, I believe he's from Prague or maybe from Czech Republic, and this is sort of a love letter to his city. So it is a busy board, but I absolutely
it's gorgeous.
Love the illustrations.
I really like that kind of dense style. If you like, the Where's Waldo, like you can just sit there and kind of lovingly let your eye wander over the map and take in all of these different details. And I think one of the pleasurable things about the game that I think it partially really succeeds in is, like, as you build the city, you start to kind of like fill out the map with additional artwork. And that's nice. You do feel like the progress of the city filling up as you contribute to it.
Yeah, there's also some functional and not so functional components. So on the functional end, one thing is when you track your gold and your stone, those are your two resources. You actually have these two little dials on your player board. And as you move your dial up, just a circular dial. And by the way, and these are illustrated very beautifully as well. It looks like a little sort of like mill
like
of
machine,
some sort.
Yeah, like a wooden stone constructed siege engine almost, right?
Yeah. So one thing that happens in this game is, like, when you reached 6 gold or you reach 6 stone, in both cases, you get to move up what's like a book track, essentially. It's like a technology track. And they could have just drawn like a little marker on there to say, hey, you get this when you get here. But it's easy to forget that. And so what happens is, as your wheel tries to cross the threshold into 6, it bonks into a cube that's covering that icon. Right. And so it's like saying, hey, you're going up the technology track. And also you get that cube. That cube is nominally important for other things. But it's just like a cool, user-friendly thing that reminds you got something. And we also get that with the wheel itself. The wheel does a certain number of full rotations before the game ends, like depending on player count. And every time it goes by this one area, there's like a cube in the wheel that drops down. That when that happens, it is a reminder to the players to advance another cube forward. And the reason why the other cube is just to track how many rotations you've made. It's kind of like, it's like ding dong, you've now made one rotation. Now you've made a second one. It's a cool, really cool feature to track your progress in the game with these rotations.
Well, it's also like, this is one of those games that has different tiles come out in the game for the first half of the game, and then there are different, like, higher cost but higher rewarded tiles that come in for the second half. And so a little bit like Tzolk'in, the gear here is going to represent time in the game, and like you're going to like this clock of a wheel kind of like keeps turning, and you're tracking your progress, and then eventually you're going to everybody's going to have their 16 turns, but that's part of what the wheel is tracking, and you can kind of see the end of the game coming there on the wheel, in the same way you do in Tzolk'in. Like, oh, there's the end of the game, and I've got 5 turns left, and I've got about 16 turns of stuff that I want to do, and I have to get it within 5 turns.
There's actually even a handy table that's there solely to help you. That when you enter your final rotation, it says, okay, player 1 has this many turns, player 2 has this many turns, player 3 has this many turns, which is probably helpful if you're trying to plan out things, because you actually can get caught off guard by how quickly or how few turns you have left. On the less functional side, there is there's like a bridge that we're building, and I've actually only played this game on TTS. I actually have the hard copy, but the bridge, you can actually build it as a 3-dimensional bridge, which is cool. But there's also these 2 tracks. There's let me say, the bridge thing is cool. I don't really see it as being very functional. It's just cool. there are also these two tracks. That's a hunger wall track and a cathedral track, and they exist on the board, but you can again also build them, and they're kind of like this like 3-tiered thing that you can erect, which is cool. But it's like I don't know if I don't know if there's much functionality beyond being cool. And people online have complained that they're actually really tall, and if you're sitting on one side of the board, you have trouble actually seeing over them a little bit, and they also are really bulky, and it involves a whole bunch of like gluing, and you can't glue the wrong thing, otherwise it won't fit in the box.
But if you walk past this game at a convention, you would stop. It's a beautiful board, and it has this 3-dimensional aspect to it where, I think both the gear and then like this cathedral and kind of wall track kind of tiers up. Like there's multiple tiers as you progress.
Stadium
and
seating.
More points in it. It's an interesting way of representing those tracks. Even like you said, it has almost like zero functionality, but it does look cool.
I think it shows like the designer was like, I just want to do something special for this. I just want this to look special and find ways to make this more than just a board game, like a 2D board game. It seemed like he really wanted to just like find ways to make it come alive where he could for users.
So Ben, why don't you describe like when you're playing this game, what's your mental process? Because I think this goes to like what you really like about this game in terms of like how when you're playing it, what are you thinking about?
Well, as we talked about before, there's like so many combos you can do, and what happens to me is I'm constantly trying to figure out what combos are going to benefit my strategy. And what I go through with this game is I go through a massive amount of tension because every action that you do, it does give you something, but often it gives you something in a direction that you're not trying to go in, I find, or intentionally. And it's not like, oh, that's annoying. For me, it's not like, oh, that's annoying. It's like, oh no, like I want to do action X, but action X rewards me for action Y. And now I've got all these rewards for doing action Y. So I probably should do action Y to lean into that, right? Because I always feel like you always want to lean into things. And then I'm doing action Y. But when I'm doing action Y, I'm now suddenly rewarding action Z. And so the game is constantly pushing and pulling you in all these different directions. And I think, and I'll give some examples too, by the way. But I think what makes it interesting is trying to really focus and say, okay, where are the distractions and where is my through line? And I think that's a really, really fun challenge. So to me, the clearest example is that when you build walls, a lot of the walls will give you movement on the hunger wall track, which we mentioned. And as you move along the hunger wall track, you will get more points for these blue discs that you can sort of get throughout the game. And the primary way that you get the blue discs in the game is by building buildings in town.
Right.
But when you build buildings in town, one of the things that buildings in town do is they move you along the cathedral track. And the cathedral track, the more you move on the cathedral track, the more you get rewarded for red discs. And the way you get red discs is by building walls. So like the more walls you build, you are going to be creating a lot of red discs, but you're not getting any points for your red discs because you're getting points for blue discs. So then you have to go build your blue discs. And it's like you're constantly like, which way do I go? You know?
Right. And I think like there's probably 5 or 6 different examples of like, I want to be doing this, but to do this, I have to do this before that. And if I'm doing that, I needed to do this before that. Like that's, and they're like clearly part of the design of the game is that there isn't some simple, I'm going to do A, then I'm going to do B, then I'm going to do A, then I'm going to do B.
Yeah.
Like there's no simple engine for you to flog here, which is
it's really hard to flog an engine
of that. But it also can mean like going through that mental process that you just described can be potentially paralyzing because it's a huge decision space. And I know I certainly had a temptation to be like, okay, this is overwhelming. What's the low hanging fruit this round? And I'll do that. Like, And
Yeah,
because it's
I mean,
like you said,
you
it's
have to.
offering you this thing. It's like, you may really want to be mining right now, but look, if you do the wall over here, you're going to get an additional 4 victory points. Can you
Yes,
pass
and
up
that's
4 victory
you
points? I don't
can't.
think you
You
can.
can't. You know, another perfect example are these friggin' eggs. So, one of the actually
Eggs. We didn't
people are
even
like,
get to
what?
the eggs.
We didn't even talk about eggs. So, this is in the instruction manual that when the Charles Bridge was built, um, they used eggs in the mortar because it was believed that eggs would make it, you know, be super strong. And, you know, and then proudly it's like, and it's still standing today. So, so when you go up it says it in a Southern accent too. But when you go up the road, the thing is with the road, this road that we talked about, you go up, the road is a series of action spots. And so you go from action spot number 1, and then you go to action spot number 2, and then action spot number 3. And then the last 2 spots are actually this bridge. And when you get to the bridge, you can put some tiles out, and you can just basically, you're building this bridge. And so as you move along this road to really effectively use these action spots, you have to spend an egg, and then you'll get something really cool along the way. So what might happen is you're like, I'm just going to build walls. And then all of a sudden you get a wall that gives you an egg. And you're like, well, I got an egg. I might as well go up that road because I can use that egg to then increase this thing. Cause I've got an egg. I might as well take one of those awesome spots. And then, one of the middle spots on the road is that you can spend an egg and get a golden window. And the golden window,
Ooh.
notice the reverence in my voice when I say the golden window. Because you have windows in this game that you mentioned before. You can spend a gold window and a silver window because you can also get silver windows. And when you do that, you get an extra action, which is so massively important. It is truly so important. So what happens to me all the time, Trey, is this perfect example of like getting sidetracked in this game. I'm like, well, I need to get an extra action. That's really important. So now I've gotten the gold window, and now I'm halfway up this road. And now that I'm halfway up this road, should I keep on going? And now that I'm going up the road, and now all I care about is finding eggs. And then my other strategy is just like gone out the window.
Right.
It's
I'm committed to the road. I've got to complete this bridge. Is the place I found myself playing this game. It's like, I got to get to the end because the rewards are so big there. And then every other aspect of my game is garbage.
Right. Well, what happens is I always end the game. I've never won this game, and I always end the game. Or have I? Did I win one time? Yeah. I think I did win one time.
Quite sure you've beaten me.
I think I did it once. Yes, that's right. I played with you and Paul and David. But a lot of times when I look at the end of the game and look at the wreckage of my gameplay, I have all these, strategies that I got 3/4 of the way down the path of, but I got distracted away from them every single time.
Yeah, no, that's certainly the way I've felt at times. It's like trying to figure out this game. Like a lot of games, it kind of ends before you feel like you really had time to get your plan to fruition. That said, it's not short.
No,
or at
it's
least
not.
it hasn't. Like some people, this is again one of those games where people will say like, "Oh, you can play this game in 90 minutes." Well, apparently not with our group, because it is a giant decision space, and so it's hard to just be like do your lickety split move a lot of times because there's just a lot to consider if you're trying to play this game competitively.
Yeah,
but I've been frustrated a lot of times where I get to the end of the game and I'm like, "Oh, none of my plans." And so that's just a skill thing. Like I don't know the game well enough to have my like plans take off because this is like you said like a combination game where to do this I needed to do this and I needed to do this, and I'm sure that like when you're good at this game or you're having a good game, those things align and your game sings.
I think so. But at this point, I've actually played this game a good number of times, and I still struggle to get things to align the way I need them to. Right. A lot of times, those bonuses are so important, and you'll be looking, and there'll be a building that you need to build, because that'll give you a bonus. That'll maybe move you on the book track. And if you move on the book track, there are as you move up the book track, you will open up technologies that'll give you ongoing powers. And I'm going to build that building. And then someone else builds it. You're like, it's like that is a constant feeling in this game. And those those technologies, by the way, just
cool.
add on. They're really cool, and they're really small, but they're really cool. It's like you get an extra gold when you do a production action, let's say, and just getting that extra gold is really it means a lot. It feels special when you get that extra piece of gold.
Yeah, I think if you're listening to this podcast, your eyes are probably glazing over like on the different tracks that we're talking about here. Yeah. This game has so many tracks, and I think like you're talking about the technology track. That's really one of the cool ones because like as you advance in the technology track, like it can really define your game. It's giving you these extra bonuses. It can give you an extra action. You feel like my position is starting to really diverge from the other players, and things are starting to kind of click together. That said, there's a number of tracks where it's simply like I'm advancing up this thing and it's going to give me more points at the end of the game. And there's probably like 8 or 9 that are kind of like that. There's some unsexy tracks.
There's one very unsexy track. Listen, I was resisting calling it unsexy, but it's not a sexy track.
Was the scholarship track? The scholarship track is not a sexy track. It's just because your points at the end are like multiplying your scholarship track by your technology track.
So the reason why it's not a sexy track, so you have your book track, and as you go up that, you get your technologies, right? And by the way, it's really important to get those technologies, especially when you get to the level 3s and level 4s are instant things, and the level 4s, like I will open up my choices for level 4 technologies because you draw from a little stack, and you look at them, and you're like, oh my god! Like you just like shout it out because you're like, this is going to change everything for me. So that's the book track is so fun like that. And then the scholarship track, the university track, is just a track. And then basically what it is at the end of the game, you're going to multiply how far you got up the book track by how far you got up the scholarship track. Because like one region of the scholarship track is like a multiplier of 1. Then the next is 2, and if you get to the tippy top, it's 3.
It's 3. So
it's
hot.
Purely you could max those all out and get 24 points, which could be actually very significant. But it feels like with everything in this game, when you do something, you get a cool perk. And the scholarship track is actually, I think, the only area where you get nothing cool the entire game, which is a little bit surprising. It almost makes me feel like could there have been I don't know. I
don't know. The cathedral track and the wall hunger track are a little kind of there's like they can trigger certain rewards when you get to higher levels of the cathedral track, but that's mostly like a point multiplier at the end.
Well, so I don't know if you've played it, but so one thing with this game is that the cathedral and wall tracks, there are different versions of the tracks you can play with. Oh. And so the base one, you pretty much the bonuses that are scattered around that are pretty much just points, but you could get with some of the other ones, there are juicier bonuses, which might sweeten the deal a little bit.
So on the actual physical game, would we like turn over the cardboard on those tiers of?
I believe so. There's an A side and a B side, and then there's like a basic or something like that.
There's one of those games that like there's an A side and a B side of a lot of things. Like the action wheel, the actions on that action gear have an A side and a B side, and we've played with both.
I recommend the B side. Yeah, I'm just gonna say A side is perfectly fine, but like the way the A side works is like there'll be 2. Let's say there'll be 2 wall building actions, and those 2 wall building actions are always paired with who knows? I forget maybe like the road action, but it's always paired with the same thing,
right?
Whereas the B action, one wall action is paired with one action, and one's paired with another one. So there's just a little more. Yeah, a little bit more of a decision space there too.
No, I agree with that. So tell me, so what do you? I know you really like this game. You suspect that Matt will really love this game. Yeah. We talked about this being like the make lemonade from lemons style of victory point accumulation. But like, tell me why why does this really activate your brain? Why is this game fun for you?
I have to say, I absolutely love this game. This would have been my number 2 game of 2020 had I played it in 2020 behind the Transcontinental. This fires on all cylinders for me. I love this branching decision space. I love these combos. The art is very warm and draws me in. I think if this had been a game that had been a little bit more sterile and had like the tracks hadn't been as sort of obscured by art or sort of, vamped up by art. I wonder if I would have, I might have dropped down like a little bit, because I do think actually in this way, the art is very inviting, and that does help the experience. For me, what I love are those choices and trying to navigate through this mess. I enjoy experiences of seeing a wheel of actions and sitting there and just saying, oh gosh, please don't take that action. Please don't take that. I need that so badly. I need that so badly. I love that feeling. I love looking at a market of tiles and saying, I need that one. I need that one. I need that one. Oh my God. She just took that one. I enjoy that those
you
ups
have a
and
lot
downs.
of those moments of like the person takes the exact thing you want. You're like, no.
But it's like a fun frustration.
You can almost count on it.
Yeah. But even more so when you do have those big combo turns, like they are so good. They are so good. Like I can't express.
That is sexy. The big combo turn is sexy.
That is so sexy.
That's where the sexiness is.
Well, I think that's why the scholarship track feels, I keep calling it that, but the university track feels kind of like a letdown, because there are so many fun moments for me in this game when things fire off. It's like a plan just falls into place. Or even what's even more fun is that you think you're taking a simple turn. You're like, oh, I guess I'll just do this. And they're like, oh, wait, I get that bonus. Oh, and that gives me that. And that gives me that. And I just got a gold window. And it's just like, it's a snowball in your turn. For me, it's a great ride of emotions. And it sings for me. Sings.
So it sounds like what you're saying is like just in the mentality of where your head space is when it is your turn in the game, you are relishing this kind of very rich decision space in that moment of like, there are so many things I can do and I'm being pulled so many different ways.
That's exactly right.
And there's a richness there of trying to gauge all of these different factors there. And then ultimately I just got to pick one and do it, and stuff's going to happen. And a lot of times it beautifully cascades. I relate to this. I think where like this may be a little bit different in terms of like what's pleasurable for me is that what you're describing there is sometimes a source of frustration for me, where because it is to me this feels like this is a tactical decision. I'm making this decision right now, and I think one of my criticisms, and maybe we argue about this fairly is like I feel like I've felt frustrated that I can't implement more of a strategy, like it's a really long-term strategy, because when it gets to my turn, like I just have to deal with what's in front of me at that moment and make the best move at that time. And so I'm feeling frustrated that I can't implement a strategy. And maybe that's just kind of like the kind of games that I want to play, is that I want that longer arc. And so so the negative for me in this kind of, headspace of the game is that I did find myself at times being bored when it was not my turn. I'm trying to plan, I'm trying to strategize, and then it's going to change a lot. That said, generally, like when the person goes in front of you and they take the thing that you wanted and they're starting to do their turn and it's starting to cascade and you're cursing them under your breath, like in that moment, you are planning your next move and you're thinking about that. But I did find that there were times when I was not super engaged when it was not my turn. And I'm also feeling that pressure of like, now it is my turn. I wasn't able to plan so much. There's this giant decision space in front of me. And I'm in my head, there's that internal clock going tick, 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 tick. Everybody's waiting for me. Everybody's waiting for me. Everybody's waiting for me. I got to pick something. I'm going to go with this,
I think this is why you're actually so good at the game, because you're actually very good at this game. And I think the reason why you're so good is because you keep your head clear when it's not your turn. And what I do is when it's not my turn, I think, okay, I could do this. And I go plan A, and then I come up with plan B, because if plan A doesn't work, I could do plan B or plan C. I was like, because the truth is there are always so many interesting routes they can take where it's like, well, I really should work on, I should build up my gold production, because if I build up my gold production,
clearly
that will give me 1 gold. And that 1 gold is all I need to get up to 6 gold. And that will give me a book movement, which then gives me a technology. And then I can get a technology. And that's really important. On the other hand, I could do this thing and get an egg, which is also important because of this. And so it's like, for me, I spend my off when it's not my turn thinking about the different possibilities. And I love thinking about them. But then I think what happens is that I get tangled up in them. And then I overthink it. And then I usually choose the worst possible one. And I think that you are just like, I will just sit here and not entertain any thoughts. And then when it's my turn, I will look and I will clearly see what is the best option and I will go forward.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm doing that. I think the difference is like if we can go to like the emotional side or whatever is like I think that decision space, that mental state is more, it may be a little bit more pleasurable for you.
For me.
Like being in that moment, and for me, it can involve a little bit more frustration and maybe even like stress. I don't like people feeling like they're waiting for me. I think Jennifer talks about her frustration with people that are AP. I think this game can certainly produce it.
Yes.
But then we're going to play heavier games in this group. Like we need weighty decisions. That's part of what appeals to us. I like it when I can do more of that on other players' turn.
Jennifer, I don't want to misquote her. I'll just paraphrase. She said, what stuff were you on when you decided that you liked this game? She
does like it a little bit more now. She's had to replay it because she wasn't able to sell it.
I think I thought she did sell it. I don't know. She didn't. Her experience was definitely not as positive as mine. But I see what you're saying. I really do. It has so connected with me. Like I feel, if I may just like indulge in some hyperbole, I feel like when I play this game, I'm getting a hug. I just feel warmth. I feel like the decisions are really fun, and I feel like it's a warm experience. And I just love trying to figure out how all these things work together. I also want to point out, by the way, that this game actually does have a really good amount of variability. We did talk about how the tracks we could do different tracks, and we also talked about the side A, side B for the actions. Another thing I just want to point out is that road that we talked about, there's a road that's printed on the board, but you can actually overlay it with some other action spots, which really change it up. So I played a 3-player game last night, Trey. I played it with people who'd never played it before because I kind of wanted to get their read on it.
Right.
And so in the game that we played, the very first action spot on that road was that as long as you are here on this spot, anytime you do the upgrade action, you get 2 points and either a stone or a gold, you choose, which is actually, that really affects it. It affects like how fast you go up the road. It affects like what actions you're motivated to do. And so just even having one option like that change up makes a very different not a very different game, but it changes your thoughts.
Yeah, the variable setup in this game is huge, both in terms of like what rewards are on the city for the plazas, what tiles come out at the beginning, what side of the tiles you're using. Like they've definitely given tons and tons of options so that this game never comes close to playing the same way twice. That said, and maybe this is my problem, I've ended up kind of I did try a different strategy where I was like, I'm going to do the upgrade strategy this time. That didn't work out.
You were not happy.
Other than that, I do feel the temptation of completing the bridge every time. So it's like, it's so different. And then I did the same thing.
I do find myself sort of getting pulled into the same things, but I also, this is not a game where I feel like it's samey. I just feel like I wind up sort of falling into the same trap a little bit. I do think it's not samey. I will say you can be really like it's easier to go up, I feel like, the hunger wall than it is to go up the cathedral wall a little bit, because I just feel like walls are a little bit easier to build than buildings. So then as a result, I just feel like I'm always getting the stuff I need to get to go up the hunger wall,
Works out that way.
Yeah, it just works out that way. The road is relatively easy to go up if you really just decide you want to go up the road. But what I like about this game too is, and maybe this is why it feels like a hug, it does feel like on almost every single thing you do, you get a reward in some fashion. Not going up when you go up the university track, you don't get a reward, but usually the university track is a reward. But I feel like you always get something. And I think back to, I only played Darwin's Journey once. So the case is not closed with Darwin's Journey. I played Tekenyu twice. And those are both games where there's like a lot of stuff going on, and you can do this and it bounces off to that. You combo this with this and this and this. And I definitely felt like with both of those games, there was a lot of like, no, you can't do that. No. Oh, you don't have those. You don't have the surcharge.
Right, where stuff is gated more.
Very gated.
Here, like, you can do whatever you want. And it's just a question of like, what other like nice bonuses and shinies and bennies do you get?
Like if you don't have enough money to build that house, that's fine. Maybe you can build this house instead. Or if you can't do that action, but you could do this action and still get something from it. Like every turn I felt like it's very rare where I would have a turn where I felt like I did nothing. It happens, but it's very rare.
There are a few micro turns, but that might be the right thing sometimes. Like, right. This is the one thing that's stopping me from doing my mega super Caput Regni, next turn to do it. Like, I think the comparison I made is like, I think this is a much better version in some thematic, in some ways of Trismegistus. Like
which I haven't played.
Which you haven't played, okay. But like these kind of like A leads to B leads to C, and sometimes like I'm combining and do this, and it's going to combo, and we're going to pull these things together to do this. Like this is a better version of some of the pleasures of Trismegistus. That said, like Trismegistus is like one of my least favorite games I've ever played, and this kind of falls in the category of like games that I think that are good games that are well designed, but just kind of just don't click for me entirely. And I feel like I'm probably going to play Praga some more. I'm not especially looking forward to it, but I also feel like I could get better at this with more mastery. I might appreciate it, but it probably is not. It's not clicking for me the same way it's clicking for you.
Yeah,
it's definitely a good game, and I'm finding lots of bits of pleasure in playing it.
But it's not sticking with you.
It's not.
Yeah, that's okay.
Good
it's
games.
Not sticking to you like an egg yolk on a bridge.
We have so many great games to play with. Like we're making decisions about our time a lot of times, and so I'm not sure I'm eager to play this one again. At the same time, I recognize that this is a very good game that a lot of people will absolutely adore the way you do.
I think one thing that it's actually very important that we discuss, which we haven't talked about at all, but I think this is a very important factor for people, is the interaction in this game. Player-to-player interaction. It's not high. I don't think it's high. I think it's there. I think it's there because I do pay attention to how many resources people have. I'm thinking about things like, I need to build that house, but I need to do something else. Can I get away with not building that? What is the likelihood that piece might be taken? What is the likelihood that person might buy that house? Like, what are their resources? What are their resources? So I'm thinking about things like that. But in terms of like the sort of the more playing, it's like indirect interaction, I think, which I'm totally fine with, and I'm happy with it, and I honestly have no issues with that. I think the most that there is like direct interaction is in the building of the towns, where we talked about you build these houses around plazas. And one thing that can happen is if you have the most presence around a plaza, you can get like a boatload of points and bonuses. So that is an area that there could be like a lot of interaction. But I've never really. I think it was only in one
hasn't
gameplay.
Exactly played out so much in our games yet.
Yeah,
like we wanted to play it at some different player counts to see if that actually became more. The city game became more interactive with more people. And like we specifically brought in Paul to kind of say like, we'd like this game to be kind of like a knife fight in the building buildings around plazas, and we just kind of like haven't found that to be true or especially interesting yet.
Yeah, it's like perfectly fine interaction.
Yeah.
The interaction tends to be like if I align this building here, there's a lot of the tiles have like little markings on the corners and on the sides. And if you line up like the blue corner with this blue corner, you're going to get a blue token. Those are the tokens I mentioned before. Yeah. So if you line up this blue token with that blue token, you're going to get a token. But then if someone comes in and lines up their blue corner with the 2 previous blue tokens, they're going to get 2 blue tokens. So you're creating opportunities for people. So you have to consider that. So that's something to think about. And you are trying to get that presence. But, one of the reasons why I think that we don't have a huge knife fight is also there's only certain type of building tiles that allow you to exert presence on the board. Right. And so if those tiles don't come up a lot, then you're not going to have that major interaction. You'll have a different type of interaction. I'm not going to bother going into it, but you don't have like you don't have like an area control in the same way. And so you do have interaction. I think, Trey, didn't we play one game where we did get a lot of city tiles out there?
Yeah.
Or no?
We have, but it still didn't feel that interactive.
It wasn't like
we weren't competing. Like we kind of wanted, like, are we competing to complete these plazas? And it still felt a little, I'm just pursuing my, I'm doing the thing that's best for me at this moment type of thing.
Or I'd want to compete and I'd be like, I really want to compete, but like everything has pushed me towards the walls instead,
The interactivity for me in this game is that the game presents you with all kinds of benefits, all kinds of choices and benefits that are there to be snatched up. And so like the main interaction is, what action are you choosing, right? Like there's all these things there, like what action you're choosing. And sometimes you will absolutely think, I can't, like, this may not be the best move for me action wise, but it's going to make someone else's game. So I have to deny them that because it's just too good for this person. I have to do it. And I think that's mostly where the interactivity is, like, this wealth of possibility of stuff that you can snatch up. And you're constantly snatching stuff up and having other people snatch up the things that you wanted. And like, that's where the interactivity is. And that's not the worst thing, because you're certainly, nobody's punching you in the face in this game. It's not one of those games where you're, like, oh, Ben just wrecked me with that play, which is possible even in games like Agricola, which is worker placement, where like, somebody took that renovation, I'm not going to get to a stone house like that, and I needed that stone house so bad in order to trigger 3 other cards I have. I'm dead. Thanks, Ben. That's not this game,
right? But you don't. But there's not a lot of motivation to get into someone's head, and not being like to screw with someone.
So just be like, already big enough, right?
Yeah, like there's like, even in Concordia, my number 1 game of all time, yours too, right? Is it your number 1? Yeah. Okay. You do have a motivation to be like, what sort of cards do I think TREY is going for? What sort of place do I think he's going to be going next? Like you want to think about their motivations on a little bit of a deeper level. And I don't know if at this point I'm getting that from this game. And actually, my friends last night, they actually felt like it was fairly interactive for all the reasons that we've said. And they said, I bet this is the sort of game that once you really get a lot of experience, you can start to get to that level. And that may be true. And I think that's super cool. I'm happy. I love the game even without that layer. But for some people, they probably want that layer. And that's just something that I think people should be aware of if they're thinking about going into this game.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I just want to say my one other quibble, which is that with the road, when you get to the road and you get to the bridge, one of the like the benefits of getting to the bridge is that you get to search through this stack of tiles that will give you endgame points.
Looking at the tile benefits,
right? And so you've made your way all the way up that road, and then you find out like the tiles that are available to you have nothing to do
they
with
don't
your
align
strategy.
With your game at all. Right.
It's kind of a bummer moment. I guess one could say, well, that should tell you to speed up when you go up that road. Hurry up, so that way you know what those tiles are, and then you can work to maximize that. But that could be a little bit of a downer.
That tends to be like a late game thing, as you complete the bridge and get these tiles. So it's hard. It feels like this should be let me build my strategy around this huge scoring card, and instead it's more like, did I get one of the things that aligns with what I've already done?
Yeah. Yeah. Not like that like it's like maybe if those were like public information that might be cool. I don't know why it's private or hidden. So that's like one thing. I want to say that I have played this game at all player counts now, including solo. I actually never play solo games. I played this game solo twice.
Wow.
And there's a solo variant there's the solo game that's in the rule book, but there's one that's a better one that's actually on the TTS mod, and it's really fun. That may also speak to the fact that the fact that it translates to solo pretty seamlessly may speak to the interactivity a little bit.
Right,
but,
right.
But I played it all player
upon
counts.
other human players. That kind of tells you something about
tells you a little bit.
The kind of game you're playing. Yeah.
But I played it 2 players with you. I think maybe twice or so.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it worked really well at 2 players. I actually really like it at 3 or 4 because I think that the action wheel becomes a little crazier. And like with 2 players, you can kind of do what you want to do because the action wheel is not going to change that much between turns. But with 4 players, the action wheel can change a lot, which can be frustrating.
Yeah.
But it also is like really fun for me to be like, no, okay, well, I've got this. Oh, okay. Like opportunities are constantly changing. I have to say though, I just love it. I absolutely love this game. If you can't tell if you're a little bit more like Trey or me, then go on to TTS and give it a try. I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, I absolutely would tell people to play this game, try it. It could very well click for you. So it's a recommend from me in like there are plenty of games I would say don't bother. This is not a don't bother. This is definitely like this may be the game for you. It might not. You won't know until you play. And it's definitely, if you're a game brainer, like this is a game you should play and know about so that you can you can
And I think that if you'd like Underwater Cities and if you'd like Pulsar 2849, I think there's a good chance you'll like this one because Underwater Cities has that concept of pairing and action.
Here, yeah. Yep.
Same designer, yeah. Underwater Cities has the idea of like pairing an action in that case with a card, but it's like pairing 2 actions together. What happens when you pair these 2 things together, which is what you have on the wheel. And Pulsar 2849, I feel like a little bit more than Underwater Cities is really all about big combos. So, I feel like I see the DNA in his previous games in this one, and I love both of those games. So this one is just right up my alley.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.